Well, Quentin, I hope you had a good end of your year. As you can see, I'm pretty much set up in the new spot, ready to tell you all about everything I watched in December 2022. Right off the bat, December 1st, I went ahead and watched the new Netflix documentary, Stutz. Now, I don't usually watch documentaries. In fact, I think I've watched maybe 2 or 3 on the whole year to this point. But I like Jonah Hill. I like personal stories. And so I knew this is one that I wanted to check out. And I'm glad I did. It seems like Jonah Hill wanted to bring the audience in on his own personal therapy session while also giving one himself to the audience. And I think he's pretty much successful in that. So yeah, keeping in mind that documentaries in general don't do it for me, this was a good watch. I give Stutz, directed by Jonah Hill, a 5 out of 10.
A patient making a movie about his therapist. But my life has gotten immeasurably better as a result of working with you. If it worked for me, maybe it will work for other people.
On December 6th, I watched an adaptation of a John Grisham novel. This was The Rainmaker, starring Matt Damon. I watched it because a friend of mine recommended it to me, and I like when people recommend me things to watch. I generally try and get to all of them, although it was about halfway through watching The Rainmaker when I realized not only have I seen this before, but I definitely remember the ending. Now, I don't think this impacted my enjoyment of the film all that much. It was still really solid, but it would have been nice to have that little punch at the end that those of you who have seen the movie, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Yeah, overall, nothing too groundbreaking here, but it's a solid story. Matt Damon gets to do a Southern accent. There's a reason he's my most watched actor of all time. What can I say? And so I give The Rainmaker, directed by Francis Ford Coppola, a 7 out of 10. On December 10th, I decided to get out of the house and go and see a double feature, 2 films I had been looking forward to for a while. This was the semi-autobiographical film The Fabelmans from Steven Spielberg, and also from Noah Baumbach, White Noise. Now, I want to talk about both of these films at the same time to get across a different point. I want to talk about not just what you take into a film expectations wise, but what you take in, what you go into a film knowing about a film already as far as real life context. Because I went into The Fabelmans knowing it was kind of a analog for Steven Spielberg's real life experience, and that very much influenced my opinion. If I did not know that, I think this kind of would have been in kind of the same vein as last year's Licorice Pizza was for me, a series of vignettes that I personally wasn't really connected to. I wasn't really connected to the characters. And I think this would have gone kind of in that same line if I didn't know it was about someone who I kind of wanted to see their life story of going in. On the other hand, White Noise was a film that I literally knew nothing about going in except for, the lead actor, Adam Driver, and the director, Noah Baumbach, and Greta Gerwig, of course. Trailers, as a whole, I think are bad. In general, I don't like watching trailers. In fact, I specifically try and stay away from most trailers. I had not seen a trailer for White Noise before going in, but this experience has had me shift my opinion on trailers a little bit, because I think with the right context, I actually would have enjoyed this movie. As it was, I didn't know what I was getting into. Tonally, I was completely lost the whole film. And I think watching a trailer might have helped me go in with the right mindset to get the most out of the viewing experience in the theater. Now, I think what I'll take away from this experience of White Noise and The Fabelmans is getting some context on a film before watching it. Now, not getting every behind the scenes tidbit, not getting every spoiler ahead of time. I still want to be in the theater, in the seats, and have some things that are fresh for the first time that I haven't seen before and that I am excited to watch. But I think it's now important to properly, calibrate your own self. That sounds pretentious. Whatever. In order to get the most out of the movie. With all that in mind, having said all of that, I give The Fabelmans, directed by Steven Spielberg, a 5 out of 10. And although I think it will be much higher with rewatches, for my initial theatrical experience, I give White Noise, directed by Noam Baumbach, a 4 out of 10. December 12th, I caught COVID and basically slept for 3 days straight. When I awoke, still sick in bed, on December 15th, I got to watch Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Guillermo del Toro is a director where I don't know if I'm always going to like something he makes, but I always know I'm going to appreciate and admire it. Now, I'm very happy to say that Pinocchio is a film that I both immensely enjoy and immensely admire. One thing I was not expecting was for it to be a musical. Now, the balls on this creative team. Yes, I know it's an adaptation. Disney's Pinocchio is an adaptation of, they're both adapting the same thing. But to put it out in the same year, to make it a musical, to almost intentionally draw comparisons, and yet every comparison you can make between Disney's Pinocchio and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio comes out on top in every metric. I give Pinocchio, directed by Guillermo del Toro and Mark Gustafson, a 9 out of 10. Eep. Eep. On December 18th, while still kind of sick, I just wanted to turn my brain off for a bit, enjoy some cool action, and so I finally got around to one that's been on my watch list for a while. This is Ip Man. That's how I've always heard it pronounced, so sorry if they got that wrong and I'm parroting what they had wrong. So I was right about one thing. The action in this film is super cool. The story that held the action in stasis wasn't really for me. Now, I'm not oblivious. I know nationalism and patriotism is built into a lot of movies that I really love. Heck, RRR Out of India was one of my favorites of the year, and it has like a whole celebration of India at the end. But when it's not subtle about these things, when I can feel it influencing the story, it does hurt my enjoyment of the film, at least on a story level. And that's kind of what I was getting throughout Ip Man. It felt a bit forced. So I don't know, maybe I'll check out the other films in this franchise at some point, if for no other reason than to catch some good action. But for this first installment, I give Ip Man a 3 out of 10. On December 20th, off of another recommendation from another friend of mine, I watched Warner Animation Group's Storks, their sophomore film. Definitely always thought that was DreamWorks. Not much to say about this one, really. I actually liked it quite a lot. I was not expecting to do so. So I'm glad it got recommended to me. Otherwise, I honestly probably never would have checked this out. I give Storks, featuring the ever funny vocal talent of Andy Samberg, directed by Doug Sweetland and Nicholas Stoller, a 7 out of 10. Here we go. Avatar. I'm leaving that in. On December 21st, the night before heading off to my annual camping trip, I went to see the highly anticipated sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water.
This family is our fortress.
So if you're watching this and you haven't seen it and you're planning on watching this movie at all, go right now to a theater. See it on the biggest screen you can, because in my opinion, that's really the only reason to watch this film. I don't know, unless you're a big Sully head, and you're probably out there. Now, on the visual level, I think Avatar 2 is second to none. Now, it did have a couple scenes. I think it was more an artistic choice than like a bad CG choice, but it ended up looking more like video game cutscenes. Again, that's not necessarily bad. It just kind of took me out of the moment. It wasn't really my preference. On the story level, I think there is a bit to be desired. Now, I'm not going to write off the whole series. There's 2-3 more movies to come after this. So there's definitely plenty of room for improvement. I just would have wanted to see that in this movie. And in fact, stay tuned. I'll have a little bit of a rewrite video out shortly on the matter. I give Avatar: The Way of Water, directed by James Cameron, a 5 out of 10. Hey, I hear for the next one there's going to be like fire Na'vi. So Jake, at this point, he conquered the air, he conquered sea. I guess in the next one he's going to conquer fire. Why does that sound so familiar?
Only the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished.
I don't know. On December 26th, after a 5-hour-long car ride home from the campsite, I decided, hey, I've been sitting this long, why not do it for another 3 hours? And I went to go see Damien Chazelle's Babylon. It's a movie. Gee. Probably one of the best examples of a successful young director getting too much freedom, having absolutely no checks and balancings, having carte blanche to do whatever he wants with this film with untold amount of resources. Now, I think were some of those in place, this could have been on the level of Whiplash and La La Land. There's moments of lucidity in this film that is really great, really beautiful, and then it's swallowed up by another 40 minutes of literal insanity, which is unfortunate. You know, you could say it was intentional. You could say a lot of things about it. But what you can't say is that it's going to be a classic. It's not going to be the Singing in the Rain of our time. It's not going to be the great modern interpretation of the transition from silent to talkie films. I think 24 Frames of Nick said it best in his Letterboxd interview, to quote, "All of it works. None of it works. I don't know. I had fun." I give Babylon, directed by Damien Chazelle, a 6 out of 10.
It's the most magical place in the world.
On December 27th, I watched something that I should have watched a whole lot sooner. Enter Galactic. One of my biggest surprises of the year, and it came right at the end of the year. I absolutely loved this. Now, at its base levels, it's just a rom-com, a fairly standard rom-com at that. But the character writing, the vocal performances, the music, and of course the animation elevates everything to its top level. I have had the album on repeat ever since finishing this, and my only knock against this film is that sometimes the stiff animation style, the drop in frames that they chose to use. Now, this is a style they chose to use. Again, I'm not saying this is bad, but that decision did take me out of some moments when I'd really prefer to be invested in the characters. But that's it. Otherwise, basically perfect. Well done. I give Enter Galactic, directed by Fletcher Moles, a 9 out of 10. I feel like my camera's getting lower as the takes go on. Also on December 27th, I wanted to see what all the buzz was around Darren Aronofsky's new film, around Brendan Fraser's so-called comeback performance in The Whale. And yes, I finally know it's Fraser, not Frasier. I know this has been kind of, based on all accounts I've heard, it's been a little bit of a polarizing film to a lot of people, and that only makes sense. It's a film that reaches into a lot of very personal spaces, kind of reaches in there, takes them out, makes you look at them, makes you look at things that you'd rather ignore. For me, personally, what I want to say about this film, I'll just leave it at this. This film made me think about my own life. I give The Whale, directed by Darren Aronofsky, performed beautifully by Brendan Fraser, a 10 out of 10.
Do you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing.
The Whale now joins Marriage Story and RRR in the 10 out of 10 club. I don't know if I'll keep it going, like if I'll just end it there and then restart it for the new year. I'll probably keep this one going and see how many I actually add on in the club. But for now, it's those 3 inductees, which is kind of neat. On December 28th, after unfortunately missing its theatrical run, it was only in theaters for kind of a small window in my area, and I just couldn't ever find the exact right time to go see it, which is really unfortunate. I ended up liking this movie. It was George Miller's follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road. It was 3,000 Years of Longing. Switching hands. All I knew going into this film was to expect the unexpected. And I suppose in that respect, it's a good thing I didn't go on opening night with all the Mad Max diehards, because Mad Max, it was not. This was a story about stories, a story about love stories more specifically. And I have to say, I love how the story was told. I think Idris Elba and Tilda Swinton were exceptional in this movie, and that's really key because 75% of this film is just them sitting in the same room for the whole movie, talking to each other, telling each other their stories. There's a real pessimistic darkness in this film that's matched by an equal and then greater hopeful sweetness that I just really liked about this movie, honestly. I'm happy to give George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing an 8 out of 10. Okay, now I'm like 100% certain that this is dipped over the course of filming. Let me just... Yeah, that's more like it. Now you can see Kermit. Well, Quentin, back in, I think it was September, I promised you that I would watch a certain movie. And then again during October's show, I publicly repeated that promise. And I'm happy to say I kept it. I kept it on the last day. I procrastinated, but I kept it. I still get full credit. I turned it in on time. I watched on December 31st, Mean Girls.
Do you even go to this school?
No, I just have a lot of feelings.
Okay, go home.
And now that I have watched it, I understand. I get it. This isn't just a comedy about high school girls. This is a cautionary tale about the corrupting power, the corrupting influence power has over the innocent. Sweet Katie struggling to maintain her humanity after being imbued with godlike influence over her fellow man, over her peers, climbing up the ladder and pushing those above and below her off the rungs until she herself is the only one left to fall. Thank you, Quentin. For now, and only now, do I truly understand what it means to be a mean girl. Oh, that speech was too powerful. My camera stand just totally gave out on me. All right. I give Mean Girls, directed by Mark Waters, a 6 out of 10. Well, Quentin, that does it for 2022. A pretty good year in film, I would say. Now, Letterboxd said I logged just over 200. I think it was 207 films last year. Looking forward to seeing all that 2023 has to offer and then telling you about it. See you then.